The truth is, the rom-com is one of the most enduring genres of film, and yet it's always kind of put in this category. They're kind of lesser than. And I think there is an inherent sexism baked into that.
The rules as they exist pretty much suck for women. I mean, why do we have to wait for men to propose? Why is everything on his terms? Now, I think it is time to shake things up.
I did not grow up in a filmmaking family, but there was a period of time where I had a VHS of Mary Poppins, and I watched it over and over and over. I thought, oh, I have to be an actress. I'll be Julie Andrews. I went to Carnegie Mellon on scholarship for theater, and I started working, and I did shows like Charmed and She Spies and Law and Order. And the more I worked as an actress, the less satisfied I was. And I remember going to a screening of some indie film I'd done, and I really didn't like it, and I had no control over it, and I thought, I think there's another side to this that I never even considered. And I started writing and directing short films.
I said yes.
Nice. Yeah, and I kind of asked him to bring a friend for you.
I was really close to Kristen Ritter, who was an actor, and she was part of what led me to go, oh, I'm not an actor. So we wrote Life Happens together as two friends. When we first started talking about the film, the idea was Kristen was gonna play a supporting role. I was gonna shadow whatever director we got. And then I remember us coming to this point, and she was like, I'll play the lead. And I was like, yep, and I'll direct. And we just leapt in. And on my first film, there was someone involved in production who called me the C word and then accidentally forwarded it to me. And so I printed it on a shirt, a maternity shirt, and wore it to a meeting with a little arrow to me. I always kind of had fun with it. I'm like, not everyone's gonna like you. There are gonna be people who have issues, and you can't let that define you. I've had a pretty good experience in terms of that, but I also think it has to do with tuning it all out. One place where I did feel that my path was inordinately difficult was breaking into television. I had done these 3 features with no resources. I also went on and did a bunch of commercials, and the show that really changed my life was The Mick.
Cool off, Mick!
They brought me on, and I ended up doing so much of The Mick, and The Mick led to Sunny. When I first was doing it, I would hide that I was pregnant. I would kind of minimize the fact that I have a family. I was afraid. And so it's like, how do you find that balance where you give yourself 100% to the job, but you also do have a whole other side of yourself that is also very important? The guilt, I think, is something that's very real with women. And that, I think, is a difference between men and women. Is like, you know, men, it's expected you go do your job. And how do you balance that? It's a tough one. I don't have the answer.
Yeah, get your thumb in that
There?
one.
That
yep,
one?
and then
Okay.
take 3 steps, kind of. You want to land on your left, and don't be afraid to use those little...
Jennifer lives her life under the microscope. She has been dissected and, you know, made fun of and torn down and built back up and torn back down, and she has persevered through it all. When I signed on and started talking about the film, I was kind of hesitant to bring up these similarities, and I tiptoed around it, and she was the one who was like, look, there are a lot of similarities here between my life and this character. And she was so open, and I think it's part of what makes her so enduring is, yes, she lives her life out loud and in the public, and she has suffered the consequences of that, but she doesn't let it stop her. She keeps going, she keeps creating. You know, another thing that I found really fascinating that's baked into the narrative is, as long as she's been around and as many things as she has done, she has not, in a way, been given the recognition. And you think, but wait, we're not going to feel sorry for Jennifer Lopez. She's so famous. She has so much. But it is strange for someone who's done as much as she has. Like, I was shocked to learn, like, she's never won an award.
No, it's like math. When you get a problem wrong, you just don't give up on it.
We did talk a lot about rom-com as a genre and about really leaning into the genre, because this is Game Changers and you are going to discuss gender. One of the things that I find really frustrating is this idea that, you know, that rom-com is a lesser than genre, that it's a chick flick. The truth is, the rom-com is one of the most enduring genres of film, from Charlie Chaplin to the musicals of the 30s and 40s. 1940s to the 80s to Nora Ephron to Marry Me. It's never died. It exists. People love it. Men and women love it. I've had more men at this press conference tell me that this movie made them cry than women. And yet it's always kind of put in this category, like they're not considered for awards, you know, they're kind of lesser than. And I think there is an inherent sexism baked into that. And that's why I really approach this with, like, I'm not going to be afraid of the cliches of the rom-com or the tropes of the rom-com. I'm going to trust that our story has enough layers and that the characters are deep enough and that the ideas are bold enough that we can do all the things that rom-coms do and get away with it.
I'm a normal lawyer. Well, not that normal.
I am a huge Marvel fan. When I heard they were making She-Hulk, she was someone who had existed in my orbit since I was a little kid. And I had a couple lonely years, you know, in my adolescence where I was really into She-Hulk. And I will speak to the comics. She was one of the only characters who took control of her narrative, literally, and walked across the pages and told the writers what to do. And there was always, to me, in the comics, this fantasy of, like, what if you are a woman walking in an alley and some guy comes after you and you can grow and kick their ass. And you never have to put up with some jerk in a bar hitting on you because you can squash them. So the idea that they were bringing this as a series was just so exciting to me. You can't deal with a character who is a giant hulking presence and not deal with how that affects your work, your love life. You know, and one of the few things I can say is that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I really appreciate because it's always evolving, this is really an exploration of the more day-to-day life of a superhero. One of the unique things I can say about working for Marvel is you feel a real connection to the fans, in the same way working with J-Lo. Like, you do not want to disappoint the people who love these projects. And so it's different from anything else I've ever worked on where I was like, oh, I really want to be in tune with what people want and expect and need, you know, both from Marvel and from the J-Lo verse.